Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. In the first story, you'll be able to observe an act of malicious compliance from a store employee. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Not my money. So years ago, I worked at Walmart, and some of that time was at the service desk. Everybody knows that's where all the Karens go to raise Cain. Anyway, we had strict rules we had to follow. One of the rules was that if a customer returned something that cost over $20 without a receipt, we had to give them the refund on a Walmart gift card. If the customer wasn't happy with anything we said or did, they asked for a manager. 9 times out of 10, the manager would give them their money back. This always made the people working at the service desk look like we just wanted to give them a hard time. One too many customers complained, and we had a meeting. The manager berated us for being so hard on the customers, even though we were only following what we'd been taught to do. He said, "Y'all act like it's your money." So I got mad. Not long after the meeting, a person walked in without a receipt, and I gave them over $20 cash back. An assistant manager just happened to be passing by. He asked if I'd given them their money back even though they didn't have a receipt. I said, "Yep, it's not my money." And our second story. Neighbor likes to park in front of my house? Okay then. This happened a few years ago. My neighbor started parking on the street behind my car, like literally inches, for no apparent reason. My neighbor has a driveway, empty, and also lived 2 houses down the street. I don't have a driveway, so on-street parking is a must for me. So after a few weeks, I asked if it was necessary to park so close when there was literally no cars on the street for over a quarter mile. He said, "No, but there's no law against it," with a big crap-eating grin on his face. A few weeks pass by and my car gets hit because someone thought there was enough room to clear as his truck blocked the view of my car entirely. I see this happen, but unfortunately can't get a model or license plate number. I find my neighbor's email address, because I really didn't feel like talking to him, and asked him again if he could just park further down the road, closer to his house. He replied, "Nope, suck on it." Okay, I'd lived here for quite a long time and never had any issues with him or any other neighbor. I keep to myself, never make noise, don't have any noisy pets or parties, etc. His truck has his business name on it. Google it, find out it's his own business, lots of Yelp reviews, BBB rating, etc. All these links point to his website. I go to check his website, it doesn't load up. I head over to Whois and see that the domain isn't registered. I snag it. Before I think of what to do with it, I Google the owner's name and find out he's been convicted of murdering a child 20-ish years ago. I find a handful of links that detail his story rather explicitly. I copy-paste all those links into an email to him, a throwaway account so he can't just reply to me as I deleted it afterwards. Said something like, "Well, if you want to be a jerk for no reason, I just bought your business domain. Here's all the links I plan on posting on it. I don't have to list your business name because all your business listings across the internet have this URL pointing to it. Keep parking like a jerk. Yes, it's legal, but you're willfully doing this just to annoy me. I legally bought your domain, and you can legally link these articles. Park behind me again, and I'll launch it." Within an hour, his truck was moved into his driveway. He asked me for the domain, and I told him, "When you either move or I move, I'll hand it over. Until then, it'll remain offline." And our last story. Boss didn't pay me, so I started a company out of spite to put him out of business. The year was 2008, and I was 9 years into operating a landscape company. I'd done moderately well for myself, being able to purchase a home, pay off student loans, and start a family. I employed 4 people during the what I call work season, which for us is March through November. December through February, we lay off our workers and go on hiatus for the most part. Side note, our company focused mainly on maintenance, and in the Pacific Northwest, once all the leaves are picked up from the autumn, there really isn't much maintenance to be done. I had that year developed a relationship with a home builder who hired me to care for his personal home and very much liked our work. He asked us to start bidding on installing the landscaping to the homes he built. Sounds easy, right? Well, remember, we focused mainly on maintenance, so my crew didn't have a ton of experience in the install detail of landscape, and the homes the guy built were not tract homes or your cookie-cutter type neighbors you find in the suburbs. No, a small home for him was 3,500 square feet on a 25K square foot lot, and an average size he developed was 8,500 to 10,000 square foot home with all the bells and whistles. He was more generous in his landscape budgets than many of the contractors I'd met, and we were off to what I had hoped would be a great partnership. We finished the first 4 projects he handed us, and it was now the beginning of December when my maintenance side of things drops off. This home builder came to me and asked if I would like to keep my maintenance crew working for the winter, working for him. I knew his next home project wasn't set to break ground till late January, so I asked him what he had in mind. He told me that he and his son had been experimenting with spray foam insulation in their homes and had decided to invest into purchasing equipment to start their own company. To purchase the equipment on this level was about $100K. I said I'd talk to the crew and get back to him. The next week, we signed a contract to work with him for 3 months at a specified pay rate for 5 of us. He was confident he had enough work to keep us busy the next 3 months. First job was insulating this incredible house for this plastic surgeon who spared no expense for the gadgets and materials that he put into his home. Next was government buildings on Fort Lewis. Next was new apartment complexes, etc., etc. Now, this builder who I was friends with was not my day-to-day boss while insulating. It was his son, who's younger than I and a bit of a jerk. But we got along fine and all seemed well. The father owned the insulation company, but had very little to do with it on a day-to-day basis. Hardly saw him for 3 months. Now, being a contractor myself, I was used to not getting paychecks every 2 weeks like most working folks. I'd get paid once a month from my maintenance accounts for the previous month of service, and it didn't all come in at once. Sometimes people forget to pay on time. My crew, though, was used to getting paid in a timely manner. And after the first month of work and receiving no check from my new boss, I inquired when to expect a check. He assured me that once the check started rolling in, we would see our money. I totally get how that works, especially for a new company trying to get off the ground, so I paid my guys to keep the peace on my end, and my boss and I worked out an agreement that I would keep track of everything paid and that he would cut me a check once he was able to. I also had an outstanding landscape invoice out with the father for over $10K that I wasn't really worried about because he was always super quick about payment. Not that I had to hound him about it, but you understand. Now we're at the end of February of 2009, and it was time to gear up for the new season of landscape maintenance and put my crew back to work outside. Still, no payment from insulation or last landscape project. Things got ugly real fast as I started daily phone calls to the son now that we didn't see each other as often. I called the father, who more or less ignored me. The son stopped answering my calls, texts, etc. The father never had a straight answer for me. Now, mid-April of 2009, most communication is stopped on their end. I filed a contractor's lien on the landscape project to be put out before the next house sold, which prompted a call from the father to invite me to his home for lunch and talk. I accepted, thinking he was going to offer me a deal of some kind based on my past history with him. He basically told me that he'd been over the years screwed out of money by different people, and that it was something that I was going to have to learn to live with. My response: I've been screwed out of money that people owe me as well, just not by anyone I considered a friend. I left his house determined to stick it to him. May 5th, 2009, I started a spray foam insulation company with the same level of equipment that he had, but about a year less experience than he had. May 7th, I get a call from the father asking a landscape question, acting as if we're on normal terms. My response was, "Oh, I don't landscape anymore. I spray foam." "What are you talking about?" he asked. When I explained to him that I was operating a spray foam insulation company, he ended the phone call rather quickly. I then receive a phone call from his son 5 minutes later, who'd ignored my calls for the last many weeks, threatening me that he would destroy my hopes of making it as an insulator and said that no little landscaper could or would make it in this community. Side note, with my newly formed company, there were now approximately 4 to 5 companies in the Pacific Northwest performing this kind of service. It's a small circle of people in the insulation world, and word gets around pretty quick who does what, etc. Our very first job was handed to us by our material supplier, which happened to be his supplier, and that job was a fix. Apparently, that very first job we'd worked on, that plastic surgeon's house, was insulated incorrectly and poor workmanship. Luckily, my only involvement on that house was prep work and cleanup. We ended up removing all the insulation and reinstalling it, about a $65K job, which the owner of the house turned around and sued my old boss for and won. We then acquired the government contract at Fort Lewis that he had because of poor communication on his part. Anyway, we systematically took apart his company by being better and honest with people. The story spread in the spray foam insulation world, and we became somewhat hero-like in this region because they'd screwed so many people over. Oh, and at the time, if you might remember, the housing market took a giant dump, and guess who had 4 very large houses sitting out there that couldn't sell? Yup, the father, who ended up going bankrupt by mid-2009. The son, on the other hand, had kept his head above water somehow a bit longer, but in October of 2009, I get a call from a repo man asking if I knew the son and where to find his spray foam equipment. My father-in-law happened to be a retired cop and PI, and I put him on the case to find said equipment. 2 days later, he called with the address and specific location of the equipment, which was behind a barn on an island with the tires aired down. I made the call to the repo man, and 2 hours later, he called me from his lot as he was pulling in with a very large trailer behind his truck, asking where he could send the bounty check. I kept the insulation business for about 3 years before being bought out by another company. I also kept the landscape company and still run it to this day. Moral of the story, landscapers may work in the dirt and seem simple, but piss one off and they'll ruin you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.